Hello, and welcome to Rock Your Block. We have a great show for you today. In fact, I think I'm sitting next to the coolest 17-year-old young woman in Fairfax County. You know, maybe even the world. So without further ado, please let me introduce Miss Jordan Fernandez. Hi, Jordan. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
We're so happy that you were able to break away from your busy schedule to be here with us today.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Jordan and I had tried several times earlier this year to have an interview, but with schoolwork and so much going on, we just weren't able to make that happen. So we thought the best thing to do would be to wait until school was out, and so now you're here. Jordan is fantastic. I am so proud of her. I'm not even her mother or her proud aunt, but I am so proud of what she has done. Her Aunt Janine and I worked together, and she has talked. I've been with the organization ICP for about 5 years now. And for all 5 of those years, I feel like I'm a part of your family and know all the little cute things that you guys are doing.
Well, you're more than welcome to join it. We have a ton of extended people anyway.
You do anyway, so that's great. That's fantastic. So Jordan is an author, and she's been writing probably ever since she's been about 3 years old. I know maybe you couldn't write sentences then, but her mother could write, and you could dictate to her.
Exactly.
And tell stories to her.
I'm very good at dictating.
And so we are today going to learn a little bit more about Jordan and about your writing. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about your family.
I am a sardonic coffee addict, and I like to write in my spare time, and I like to write about werewolves because they're cool. And that's pretty much about it. I don't really do anything else, but I like to think I'm pretty good at what I do, so.
And we're going to be excited to get a little bit more into that. What about how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 2 sisters and a brother. Okay. And 2 dogs that think they're sisters.
Oh my.
Yes.
What are your dogs' names?
Izzy and Loki.
Oh wow. And how long have you had them?
Izzy is 4, Loki is 8 months.
Oh, so that's the baby.
Yeah.
Are they getting along pretty well?
Usually. Loki's pretty annoying.
That's funny. Well, Jordan, tell us how old you were. I know that I'm saying 3. I don't know if 3 is really an accurate age or not. But when you first started writing, and can you remember even at that early age, what or whom was your inspiration?
I've been writing for a really long time, but I seriously decided I wanted to be an author when I was about 11. And I didn't get really serious until I was 13 when I kind of stumbled into the paranormal romance genre. And I really clicked with that genre. I'm not quite sure why, probably because there's werewolves in it and vampires and all sorts of other fun things that can eat you. But they're a lot of fun to write about. So I guess it just kind of stuck with me, and I stuck with that genre. And that's when my writing started getting a lot better and actually worth something.
Oh, okay, good. And so how many books have you published anything yet, or how?
I haven't published anything yet, but there was this website called Ink Pop, which was run by HarperCollins Publishing Company that was for teen writers, and it did fairly well on there, and I actually got a small fan base that way.
Right.
But I'm still trying to get the actual book published now.
Right. Well, you are way too young to remember this, and I don't even know if it'll make sense, but when I was about your age, living in Tennessee, there was a series that came on that was called Dark Shadows. And I was just infatuated with Barnabas Collins. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they've done a remake of that maybe earlier in the summer. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to see it because I don't think anything can top the real thing. But I was really fascinated for quite a few years with vampires and the thing about. Well, tell us a little bit about the series, because you've done like a series, isn't it a series?
Yes.
Okay.
There are 3 books completed so far out of a total of 5, and they're about this girl her mother ran away from a werewolf pack, and she's being dragged back into it. But there's 2 sides. There's the good side, and then there's the bad side, based on their goals. And it's about trying to figure out which one she's supposed to be in, with her family or with the side she believes in.
And so, and then you got 5. So are the others, have you started on them? Are they completed?
I've started the 4th one, and the first 3 are completed.
The first 3 are completed?
Yes.
How long did it take you to do that?
It usually takes me about 6 months a book.
6 months a book?
Yes.
Whoa. Do you ever get like writer's block?
Yes, all the
time.
time.
Tell me about that, because I've always wondered about that. What does that really mean? I guess it's different for each writer?
Yeah, it's different for each person, very much so. And it's just kind of, it could be because you're uninspired, it's because you don't know what to do, it's just a multitude, it's just pretty much you can't write, your brain's not working for it. So there's a bunch of different solutions and everybody has their own, but pretty much none of them work for anybody but the person that initially does it. But the way I do it is I look at the book as the way I have it right now, and I go through all the possible answers, and I find out something that could not happen in the book as it's going at the moment, and I try to backtrack and fill in all the events until it could happen. And then even if I don't use the events, it kind of frees up your mind, and that way you can use it to trigger off other things.
Well, do you think that the fact that did you start these novels when you were 11, or?
I started this series when I was 13.
When you were 13. So do you think like the age from 13 to 17 that might have something to do with it? That when you're 13, you're thinking one way, and then when you're 17, it's different.
The way you think about how the book works totally changes. Of course, you get more experience in the genre, and it has more potential, I think, when you're older, because there's more paths you can take that you haven't considered before.
You haven't considered that before. Well, what about your school work? How does this affect what you do in school? Have you been able to do other activities, or are you just writing nonstop all the time?
I have a lot of time for other activities, but I like to focus mainly on the book because it does take a lot of time. Like, normally I try to have at least 1,000 words a day, and that could take a couple hours depending on the day.
1,000 words a day. Let's see if I even know 1,000 words. Are you still doing that?
Yes.
Whoa. So do you write mostly in the morning, or?
I actually usually write at night because my brain doesn't work the right way in the morning. I have no idea why. I could just sit there and stare at the laptop for 6 hours and get 20 words done, and then as soon as I wait till 9 o'clock, it comes a lot easier.
Right. Well, you mentioned earlier that you have a brother and 2 sisters.
Yes.
So how does that parlay into things?
They walk into the room and say, "Hey, Jordy, can I have this?" I'm like, "No, leave."
And you're the oldest, so they have to do what you say.
Exactly.
Well, your little sister, Anna, I get to hear a lot about her. What is she doing these days?
Building robots out of junk and
Really?
watching Netflix in the basement.
She's a girl after my own heart. Your aunt is always talking about the cute things that she's doing, so tell her hi for me.
Will do.
What about, are there times when you want to write and you feel that there's so much going on in the house that it's hard to sit down and focus? Are you able to focus pretty well?
I'm usually able to focus pretty well because music is a big help. You just put your headphones in and then everything else just kind of goes away, so it makes it a lot easier.
You got to explain that to me. I have a 17-year-old nephew, and for the life of me, I cannot understand how this kid can sit there and do his algebra and calculus and different stuff with the headsets on.
I think it's an acquired talent. I don't know, actually. But music does usually help a lot. I think it's just really inspiring, and it makes it less boring.
Right. So you're kind of tuning everything out, and even though you hear the music, you don't hear it because you're able to sit there and think and you write out. So is everything done on your laptop or your computer?
Yes. I initially tried to do it all by hand, but then I went back like 3 days later. I'm like, I don't know what any of this says. Right. So it all becomes pretty illegible really fast. Especially if you're trying to get all of it out at once. So it's easier to do it on the laptop, but it makes it easier to send it places, and it's going to have to be on the laptop anyways eventually, so it's easier just to start on the laptop.
Do you do your own editing, or how do you work that out? Because I know that's important.
Yeah, I've tried to do my editing, and I'm not very good at it, so mostly my grandpa and my mom and my sister do it for me.
Oh, good. So this is a family thing.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. That's great. Oh, wow.
I get to do the fun part.
And that's to write it and let them.
Yes.
So how do you react? Because I had an author on the show maybe 2 months ago, and he was telling me that sometimes when he gets edits back from people, at first it was hard taking because sometimes they think that you should take out something that author feels is important.
Yeah.
Does that happen to you, and how do you handle that?
Sometimes, because a lot of times there are pieces that don't quite fit right, and it's hard hearing they don't work because, of course, they're dear to you by that point if you send it out.
Right.
So it is hard, but you have to consider what's best for the story. And a lot of the times, if you just change it a little bit, it flows a lot better. Right.
So you've been able to, master that without anybody really getting too mad.
Yes.
That's funny. What grade are you? Are you graduating this year? You're going to be?
No, I'm going into 11th grade.
You're going into 11th grade. Okay, wow. That is fantastic. And is this what you want to do for your life's career, or
Very much so.
do you have any backup plans, or how?
I'm thinking about going into graphic design, but I'm a lot better at this, so I think I'm going to stick to this one.
Yeah. Oh, that's really rewarding. Are you working with a publisher, or how are you?
Not at the moment. When I was on the site Ink Pop I mentioned earlier, they have a top 5 of the top 5 books on the site, and I finished number 1 for the month of April 2010, and they run it through the editorial board and they critique it for you.
So tell me a little bit again about, is it called Ink Pop, INKPOP?
Yes.
Wow, tell me about that, because I had not heard about that before.
It was a site made by HarperCollins Publishing for teen writers and authors aimed at a teen audience, and basically you just post like the beginning of your book on the website, and all the other authors can critique it for you and give you comments on, like, even if it's editing or revising, or even just comments on what they like or don't like about it. And they run it through, and it helps you kind of fix all the errors in your book. And everybody they have these things called pick lists, or the site was unfortunately closed because they sold it to another website. But you could pick for your favorite books, and if your book got a pick, it went up in rank, and then the top 5 ranks went through the editorial board.
So how did that benefit you? I mean, how were you picked and ranked? And
I finished number 1, and
whoa!
Yeah.
See, I told you she was cool.
yes. So it took them about a month, and they totally critiqued the first couple chapters of the book, and it was very helpful because it gives you exactly what the publishers want from the book.
Wow.
Because it's actually supposed to be extremely hard to get published because they're so selective, and hundreds of manuscripts go in every day. So it's a very slim chance, and they help you figure out exactly what you need.
What about your teachers, especially your English and writing professors? Do they get involved in this? Are they encouraging to you, or do they even know about it, or how?
A couple of them know about it, and most of them are very, very encouraging. A lot of them don't know, but they haven't helped so much because I'm like, no, it's mine, you can't have it. So.
Yeah, because they would probably get it and maybe change every other word and every other comma.
You spelled that wrong. I know I did. I did it that way on purpose.
And your friends, how are they about?
They're all very supportive, and I think
good.
they're all kind of shocked I actually finished it, because I'm extremely ADD. I'm like, hey, I have this book, or I could have this book. And I'm not good at sticking at one.
Right.
So this is by far the one I've stuck to the longest.
Right. So when you write them, are there periods of time where you feel you just have to put it down for a while?
Yes.
You know, you get to that point. Is that because the ideas are not flowing, or you're at a point where, right now you just don't have anything to add to it? Tell me
Most
about
of the time, if I stop, it's because the ideas not really they stop flowing, but I'm not having any good ideas, and it's better to wait and write something worth keeping than spend all your energy writing something you're just going to have to get rid of.
Right.
And sometimes I think if I wait, I could consider it further and actually make it better if I continue writing later.
Right. I was saying earlier that I had an author, and he's a little younger than you. I think Adam was maybe something like 26 or 27. And one of the questions I asked him, I'm going to ask you too, was did he feel he was a head writer, writing from the head, or a heart writer? And I want to ask you, are you writing from just your head, or is it heart? Are you feeling it?
I think it's a little bit of both, because if you write with your head, then it's never going to stick to anybody, and it's never going to mean anything. But if you write strictly with your heart, it's probably not going to make as much sense, because it'll be more personalized to you,
Right.
and you'll be the only one that can understand it. So you have to make it a mix of both, so that people can understand it and people can relate to it.
Right. Well, there are, and I have to admit that I don't get a chance to watch them very often because I'm really running here and running there. But I have a 17-year-old nephew that lives with me, and of course TV is big with him. I noticed there are a lot of vampire type movies that are out, on the market, as well as TV programs and books. Did that inspire you at all, or?
Actually, now this is the one that's going to get the hate or adoration from everybody. I was majorly inspired by Twilight, mostly because I never read anything like it.
Is that the Bella and
yes,
what is the cute guy's name?
Edward.
What, Edward?
Edward, not Jacob.
Okay, not Jacob. We don't like
Okay.
Jacob. Okay.
No. So I'd never seen anything like it before, because I was majorly into high fantasy, which is like Lord of the Rings, where it's a fantasy set in a separate world.
Yeah.
But I was no good at that. So I kind of switched over when I read the book, 'cause everybody's like, read it. And I'm like, I don't want to read it. So, but I ended up reading it anyways. And it was actually okay. Actually, I thought it was good, but everybody's like, no. So I'm like, oh, whatever. But it was very different because I'd never seen anything even remotely like it. And there's a whole genre I didn't even know existed.
Right.
So it's very cool because it's always great when you find something you like you didn't know was out there.
Right. That's
So
That's right.
I kind of inspired it. And there are like 80 bagillion werewolf book or vampire books, but there are like no werewolf books. I'm like, well, I have to fix that. So
Right. So yours is definitely
mine's the
you're
best.
different. Right. Well, I'm excited to know just a little. I know you don't want to give everything away because then nobody will buy the book. So we want people to buy the book. But can you go a little bit more into what the storyline is, and like you're gonna do five, a total of 5 sequels.
Yes.
So and the first one, the first 3, at the third book, where does that leave you? Can you say where that third book?
The third book, she's made her choice on where she belongs, but there's a bigger conflict at that point because the other pack doesn't really appreciate her choice. So they're kind of at a sort of war. It's not really a war because they don't really do anything but argue and skirmish really, but it's getting up to the point where there's going to be a larger conflict.
Right.
And there's a lot of internal conflict because some members of the pack do not appreciate her decision. And
so she like the queen figure, or
kind of.
She's like
she's an
like
important
the queen.
figure. Yes.
Right. Okay, that's good. Does she fall in love? Is there any love?
Yes.
In this? There is. Oh, that gooey stuff. All right.
Yes.
I like that.
Very
That's
much
good.
so.
And is she mixing with people who are not werewolves? And
There are a few, yes, but it's mostly a werewolf society. And when the book starts, she is not a werewolf.
she is
So
not. Oh.
yes.
Okay.
So they don't.
Oh, the plot thickens.
Yes. Dun dun dun.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And what about and what is the age? Is this a teenager, or
Yes.
does she start out?
She is 16, I want to say, at the time the book begins, maybe 17. I'm really bad. I don't remember.
Right. That's okay.
Yeah. And she ages through the books, definitely.
Right. Where would you like to see your work end up? I mean, what is
On
your
a
vision?
bookshelf where people can buy it and touch it, and it's not really in theory.
Right. I mean, do you have long-term vision for maybe moving into other genres?
Yes, I want to work with the dystopia genre a lot, which is like the Hunger Games, where everything's kind of negative, because it's a really cool genre to work with because there's a lot of potential. And I'm just not very good at it so far, so it's one of those things that's going to need a lot of practice.
Right. Do you see yourself moving into like the movies? I mean, how do you feel about somebody picking up?
Because watching Twilight, I'm like, CGI werewolves, I want one, because they're very cool.
Yes.
So I think it'd be a hard book to make a movie out of because there are a lot of werewolves, but I think it'd be very cool.
Right. And you mentioned earlier about all of the support that you get from your parents. Can you remember early on the ways in which they nurtured you?
Yes.
With respect to your writing
When I was
talent?
in 3rd grade, I wrote a book called Super Bunny.
Tell us about Super Bunny. What is it?
It was based off my bunny, and I had to do it for school, and my mom helped me illustrate the entire thing.
Really?
And she didn't tell me this is bad, even though it was.
Oh, and so you had a real bunny.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. What was your bunny's name?
Loppy Lugs.
Loppy
Lugs.
Loppy Lugs. Oh, that's cute. Wow. Well, I think that's really important when you can have the support of your entire family. And it sounds like you have that, you know, which sometimes is rare because the young man earlier that I interviewed several months ago, he didn't feel that he could discuss any of his works with anybody. So he went years without anyone in the house even knowing that he was doing this.
I think that'd be really hard because it's like, why are you locked in your room?
For hours and hours at a time. That's good. Well, so do you miss, you know, you write, you spend a lot of time writing, 1,000 words a day. So do you miss the going out to parties and the other things that
I'm
kids
actually
at the
extremely
beach?
introverted, so I don't normally have that problem.
Right.
But I don't miss out on much because I like to write at nighttime. So I can still do everything I need to all day. And then I have from 9 o'clock to 3 a.m. to work. So.
When you're writing, is there special software that helps you put your ideas down, or are you just using the regular Microsoft Word or
I've
Word
tried
Perfect?
to use a couple, but they don't really work well for me, so I just keep it all in my head or in separate files on Microsoft Word.
I've often wondered how writers, how they kept everything together. Do you have a tape that you're recording things in the middle of the night? You get an idea,
I do, but I'm not very good about using it. Mostly, the good news is I have a good memory, so I can keep most of it just kind of, it's there, and sometimes I'll forget it, but when it comes back later, it's really cool because you have a great idea, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it just got even better. So,
so what you do is basically you're writing things down.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
Are you getting up in the wee hours of the morning? Is that
No.
happening? Oh, you mean when you go to sleep?
Yes.
You get your
I
8
go
hours?
to sleep, and yeah. No, you can't make me wake up.
That's neat. Well, Jordan, what kind of advice would you give to younger writers? I mean, kids maybe starting out at, I'd say 6 or 7 years old. I mean, how did you know when you were younger that this is what you wanted to do?
I don't really know. I think I've always just had a big imagination, and I like making up stories in my head, or more characters than stories, actually. And I needed something to do with them, because if they're all in your head, you're just going to go nuts.
Right.
So, and it's fun to figure out what those characters are going to be. And it's interesting because normally with me, I start with just an idea and it becomes a great idea. Like, it doesn't really have a destination, and that's part of the fun of writing, because I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen too.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, I know just as much as the people reading it know.
Are reading it. So if you had this 5-year-old or 6-year-old who was maybe very creative in that way and felt like nobody understood them, what would you say to that child?
I don't know, actually.
Right.
Because I've never had that problem, but I'd say just write it all down and you'll get it out eventually. And it doesn't really matter what anybody thinks, because even if you don't do anything with it, it's always cool to have.
Right.
So just start writing it down.
And just saving it. As a child, I thought that that's what I wanted to do, but I was more into the storytelling part and not so much really writing it down. I just like to, like you said, create characters and create scenarios and work it that way on that end. What about for the older person? Do you feel like you'd have more of a rapport with that person in terms of talking to them about their
Probably,
writing?
because writing is a very hard career to start. Yeah, I'd say it never hurts to give it a shot. Like, don't throw everything into it, but even if you just work page by page, eventually you're going to get there, and it might turn out to be something great.
Well, you said it's a hard career to start. What do you mean by that? Because for you, it seems like it was just a snap.
Yeah, but then again, I'm not actually using it to earn money, so it's hard to make a career because it's extremely time-consuming sometimes, and it's hard to get published. And even if you do get published, not all books that get published actually are enough to make a living off of.
That's true.
So it is a hard career.
Tell me, are you available for book reviews and for seminars?
Yes.
Have you done any of those
No.
today? No book reviews, no seminars?
I've done book reviews while on Ink Pop, and I've only attended seminars, but I've never actually, I don't think I've actually done any. I've more just watched them.
Right, but you are available for that.
Yes.
Jordan, tell us how people can get in contact, our viewers can get in contact with you if they wanted to.
You can get in contact with me on Facebook. I'm Jordan Fernandez, and my email address, writer.of.likens@gmail.com.
Good. Your next steps?
I'm going to try to, it's going to go through one last harsh round of editing to get the last of the bugs out, and then I'm going to go for vanity publishing.
For vanity publishing?
Yes.
Wow.
There's two kinds of publishing. There's self-publishing, where you just send it to an agency and they'll print copies for you, and you have to basically go try to find someone who will take care of it for you, and like you try to sell it to bookstores and such. And then there's vanity publishing, where you send it to publishers, and you try to get one of them to pick up the book, and then they'll handle everything else for you. But it's a lot harder to do.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you know, someone was telling me about Amazon.com had something where you could do, is it called e-publishing or
that's
something? I didn't get the full gist of it, but
that's self-publishing, where they'll print copies of the book for you.
Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, they go and they print it for you.
Yes.
And so you have to take care of the editing and of everything. All they do is printing it. Well, what good is that?
I don't know.
You need, if you were going to have somebody to work with you, it seems like you need them to do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, I'm going to give you the last word. What, would you like to tell the viewers out there about your writing and about what you do?
Writing is a very hard thing to do, but I think it's one of the most fun things you can do because it's pretty much, you can do whatever you want with writing. It's not, nobody can tell you, there's no set rules. You just pretty much just use your imagination, and it's a lot of fun once you get used to it.
Well, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. I mean, really, for your 17 years, you are one mature, cool kid.
Thanks.
And you seem to know a lot about your craft, a lot more than I ever did about what I wanted to do when I was your age. So that speaks really well to our youth, because sometimes people feel like our youth are just going to pot, so to speak. Not literally, but, and that's not true. And so when I meet young women like you and, the young man we had on several months ago, it is very, very encouraging. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you. It's been a pleasure. And thank you. Bye.